Imagine having to teach 30 kids through Zoom in the midst of a global pandemic, all while dealing with the emotional toll of injustice. What's up, everybody? My name is Hurston Sanchez, the host of Woke Wednesdays, and we're about to have this conversation with some amazing teachers. Check us out.
My name is Jason Fernandez. This is my 17th year as a high school classroom teacher.
17 years.
17 years. I teach social studies, so this year I'm teaching African American history, U.S. history, U.S. government and economics, and personal financial literacy.
Sheesh.
And my name is Vernell Patterson. Everybody calls me V. I taught for 6 consecutive years, primarily ELA. Then my previous year, a little bit of everything, and this is my first year as an administrator.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jasula Charles. This is my 8th year in education. And I've done every grade, well, not every grade level, every section in regards to elementary, middle, and high school. High school by far is my favorite. And I teach social studies, and then I'm a debate coach. So I teach policy debate.
You may ask about the coronavirus, which is very well under control in our country.
Let's get some kind of reactions. When the pandemic first started, this was at least when we first found out about it. How was it kind of relate to you, as teachers? What was that experience like from the jump?
So this was something that it just hit in so many different ways, because part of my curriculum with my students is we go over current events. So they were kind of charting, hey, is this COVID thing for real? How bad is it going to be? And then all of a sudden, boom, we're gonna take a week off, head into spring break, and then see where we are after that. That was the initial thing. We were 1 week before spring break. We decided, all right, Friday we're gonna have off, and a lot of people thought, okay, just 2 weeks, give it a couple weeks, and we'll see where we're at. Then they were like, it's gonna be another week, and it's gonna be another week. Next thing you know, that was it. We were just completely virtual for the rest of the school year.
The same thing. We were told, okay, we're going to go on spring break, and when spring break is over, we should be able to go back to school. So when that didn't happen, it felt like we were truly living in this surreal world. What the hell is happening? What is our purpose? Because we're supposed to be educators with our kipsters, we call our kiddos kipsters, but with our students, on a daily basis. And now we're not with them. And as adults, we were so confused. We didn't have any of the answers. So I can only imagine what our students were going through.
I had students who their parents lost their jobs, and now their job at Publix or their job at Popeyes is the only income that's coming into the household.
My students were very shocked. I too have mentees. I have a debate program. Everything was shut down. And my students were like, what happened? And they were checking on me, and I was checking on them. And so I think if anything, our students and myself built a camaraderie even more, because we knew we were facing history together. I'm also a history teacher. So we had our students go through, I went through my students' emergency management preparedness. What are they doing? What should they be doing? What are they not doing, and why? And so I also took an educational front to have my students look at what was happening now and how it's impacting the rest of the world, and how it should be taken care of and prepared whatever happens in the future.
This sounds like a lot, y'all. This sounds.
It's definitely.
Man, I'm exhausted just listening. Wow. Then what came next was teaching online, right? So what was that like?
I'll be the first to admit that I've definitely had porn bombs in the middle of my sessions. Yeah, it's definitely happened.
Really?
Yeah, it's kind of very awkward. I was like, oh, this is really happening on these streets today, right now. So I think
on these internets.
So I think it was a struggle. I'm not even gonna front. It was definitely hard in the beginning.
I'm trying to keep a serious face, but what?
Right.
Legit, someone would jump into your they'll jump in and they'll you'll hear very interesting music in the background and sounds and all this. I'm like, what? And you have to keep a straight face, because if you freak out, the students are gonna look at you. They're highly entertained. Some of them are mortified, and you have to keep it straight. So I think bringing structure to it. I think in the beginning part it was very difficult, because we didn't know what to expect. We didn't have any tools per se, even though we had trainings, but it wasn't we were not prepared for this.
We don't really think about what that experience was for K through 5, right? So them trying to access Zoom, knowing hey, you got to mute yourself, make sure your camera is on, and all these other different modalities, it was such a challenge for younger students to grasp, because yes, they're able to go on social media and that's easy for them, but trying to learn with nothing but technology was such a challenge. We had issues of families not having Wi-Fi and us trying to give them hotspots, and then making sure every single family in our care had a laptop and making sure the laptop worked so that way they were able to access their lessons. So it was a lot for like the younger students and even for teachers, because we weren't used to teaching that way before. And when you're teaching online, there's just so much energy that is exerted, because when you typically are a teacher, you have to intellectually plan, right? Then you need to internalize it, and then you execute in your classroom. And when you execute, there's that proximity when you're with your students, and you can just make it so much more engaging. But when you're just doing it in this screen, the planning is like 10 times more, because one slide deck for a day, you may have 100 or 115 slides. Then you got to have animations, because you don't want to show them the answer like when they first see the slide. Like, there's just so much more to it. It's like the tedious work behind virtual teaching that people don't really think about. And then in the classroom, you're just with your students, right? If a parent has a concern, they can call you, they can text you, they can email you. Now it's, excuse me, Miss Patterson. It's like, whoa, mom, sis, I got you, but can we please wait? Because I have 30 other babies on this call and they can hear you. Or the chat box is blowing up, and then you got to disable that. Like, there's just so much
Parents
more
is
to
going
think about.
like that.
Yeah, they pop up. It's like
Oh,
cameos.
they pop up.
The cameos
They will
are
pop
real.
up. Cameos are so real. They pop up. They may not be dressed in the best way,
Yikes.
with garments exposed.
Yikes.
So there's just so much more that you have to deal with when you're talking about virtual teaching as opposed to being in person.
This is my 17th year in the classroom, and I was grinding like it was my first year. I was staying up till 10, 11 o'clock, prepping for class. We moved our start time from 7:40 to 8:30. It was optional for us to go back to the school. I just like to keep my routine, so I still woke up at 5. I'd be at the school by 7 o'clock. So now I had from 7 to 8:30 to do more work to get prepared. But it's definitely been like, you feel like a new teacher again, because there's just so much to do when it comes to it.
Imagine that you were preparing for a presentation. It took you weeks to do this. You are nervous, you spent laborious hours on it, and the day finally comes. You're presenting, and out of nowhere, porn pops up. Or imagine that you're presenting and then your parents barge in.
Excuse me, darling, I'm Reese Bobby. I'm here for career day with my son, Ricky.
Can you imagine this? What I'm asking us to do is to try to put ourselves in our teachers' shoes. Our teachers spend hours on these presentations, on their educational lectures to teach our children. They are facing so many issues, especially in the midst of a global pandemic. And in fact, Jasula is actually about to tell us about some of the other complications that they have also dealt with.
My students call me either mother or auntie, one of them, whatever they want, because I'm just so hands-on with my students, and I feel like that's what we lost as well. I think it was really interesting to see, especially in the beginning of the year, like I usually am able to foster those relationships, understand my students, and just I don't know how to build through a computer screen. Like I don't know how to do that. I don't, and I work with kids in high school. I prepare students for college and things of that nature. I can't even do that because, like you said before, students are doing X, Y, and Z to support family. They're trying to make it through, so they don't know what to do. So I think the engagement piece is really critical. And I have students who are like, yo, can I leave? I'm not having a good time right now. I'm not feeling well. Can I, exit privately out of class? And you're saying some people, I think you have to emotional intelligence is very key right now. I think sometimes you cannot sit in this area and really have the same expectations for students and not believe that they don't have things going on. Yes, you want to have structure or whatever you want to call it, but you have to be really mindful of their emotional state. And I think that's something, and usually I'm able to gauge that when I'm in a classroom and I know I peep things, I know what's going on, but I can't do that so I think for me as well, being the protector of my students, right? It sounds crazy. I'm not able to do that and kind of make sure that they get where they need because they don't know me. They don't know if I'm actually being serious. Is she going to be on her word? Is she going to look out for me? Is she going to talk to this person for me? So I think to me, I can't really protect them and make sure that they progress throughout the year because I don't feel like the connection has been made and they trust me enough as a teacher.
But what about your emotions too? Because you're also people. You're also dealing with the absurdity and just the chaotic nature of a global pandemic.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I know in the beginning, I don't know about you guys, but I was just taking it day by day because you mentioned it earlier, you have so much more time and you don't know what to do with it, right? Because as educators, you're just so used to being on go. Like there's always something to do. So when the world just slowed down, it actually gave me anxiety because I'm like, okay, what should I be doing right now that I'm not getting to? Like even like my students, like I understand, yes, I'm a person, but like I just get joy, like, you know, in seeing my students and making sure they're happy. So I know like one thing I did, I would actually go see them. Like I made sure to have a mask and things like that, but I would even go see them just because that lack of consistency. And I knew that was bothering them and their families, which then bothered me. So aside from just trying to figure out what hobby I can get from all of this and how I can worry about myself, I also made sure to reach out to my families and go see them whenever I had the time.
I just watch like Netflix. Like I think for me, that's how I cope. I think literally the news. We already know how media is when it comes to that. Then you don't know what's really going on because leadership didn't want to tell us what was going on for whatever reason. And so for me, it's like, how am I going to cope? Like there's a pandemic, people are dying, people have no jobs, people can't eat, people are fighting for toilet paper in the store. Like you have all these things going on. My students, you know, are in abusive situations and they don't know how to get out. You know, my students feel, you know, are down. You know what I'm saying? There's things going on. I have other responsibilities to take care of. So for me, I was like, I need this. Can I watch somebody else's life for a minute? So I turned on. So in the beginning, all I did was watch Netflix, turned it on because I didn't even have time to watch TV during the normal school year. And then I think this pandemic forced me back into like TV, entertainment, enjoyment, and stuff like that, and things of those natures.
That last day where we kind of cleared out we were about to go on to that spring break, I left the school and I went to GameStop. And I bought a PlayStation 4 and some games. And I was like, I used to play video games all the time. And I was like, you know what? Let me finally get this PS4. So I bought a PS4. I think I read like 10 or 15 books during this. So I really had time to kind of just take that, just relax, read more. All the things that we say we're always going to do, I actually did it. So I read more. I started to play video games for like fun. I was on Netflix, Hulu, and all that stuff, you know, just watching shows. So I had more time to kind of just like recenter, refocus.
Let's be very clear. Our teachers did not go on vacation. They did not go to their favorite destination spots. In fact, they were looking for ways of coping, as we all were. Our teachers are human beings just like you and me. We looked for different ways of coping. Some people bought PlayStations. Some people read books. Some people listened to music. And yes, some people probably also watched porn. But what I'm trying to say is that our teachers are human beings. But then, in this precarious state of a global pandemic, something else happened. On May 25th, 2020, something so horrible happened that rocked the world and the nation. But what did our teachers do?
So within the network that I'm affiliated with, we had several equity conversations, like what does it mean to have an equity lens, and just opening up the floor for some really raw conversations that even may deal with educators themselves being somewhat, you know, racist or biased and not being completely anti-racist. We read a few articles because you can even be a person of color and not be anti-racist. So pretty much if someone that is racist, if they are not, how can I say it? If they're not hesitant to speak on certain things in front of you, you actually probably aren't anti-racist. So we had conversations like that. We had conversations with educators that white, whatever, just understanding that these conversations are not just transactional. It's not, okay, we had this one PD, great, so now I'm an equity leader. No, it's going to take time.
I don't know why this hit different. I don't know if it was back to back of a pandemic, but it was really depressing. Like I refused to go down social media. I used to have certain conversations for a while. There's things I couldn't watch. There's things I don't still talk about. So for me, I had to get myself right. I'm still getting myself right of how do I process this information. And lo and behold, have these conversations. My students know I keep it 100. So I keep it, keep it a buck. I was like, whatever I say, you can research it and see if I'm wrong. Challenge me, come back to me, tell me what's going on. So they know I push them. So if I was ready for a parent to be like, hey, why are you teaching my kid this? Because it's history. I'll provide you the book. You know what I'm saying? And so for me, it was already having those conversations. But I think this one hit because Because anybody could do anything. I could be sleeping on my couch. I could play a video game. I get some milk, and I will be deemed a threat. Or those who I love will be deemed a threat, and my murder will be justified by any means necessary. So how do I then now teach kids that their life, they're walking in this world on eggshells? For what? How am I supposed to process that information and tell them?
On May 25th, 2020, in Minneapolis, Minnesota, police was called on a man for using a counterfeit $20 bill. This man's name is George Floyd. When police arrived, he was arrested. These 4 police officers, individuals who have sworn to protect and serve us, brutalized this man. One police officer in particular, Derek Chauvin, put his knee to George Floyd's neck for 8 minutes and 46 seconds. Derek Chauvin murdered George Floyd. This act of police brutality is nothing new. Systemic racism and police brutality is as American as apple pie. But this murder in particular sparked numerous conversations. It sparked numerous movements around the world. In fact, it led our teachers and our panelists to also have conversations. But how did they handle these conversations? Let's take a look.
Like, I teach U.S. history, and I'm like, dude, this is what happened. You know, it's not trying to sugarcoat anything. This is what happened. These are some of the principles that our country was built upon, was designed against us. Like, that's just keeping it real. Like, you know, so it's tricky, it's hard, it's rough having these conversations a lot of the time, but these are the conversations that need to be had. And I think as long as, you know, you kind of, everything that you're doing is truthful and is like you keeping it a buck with your students, they feel that, they understand that, and you can have those hard conversations. There might be some teachers that shy away from it, but as I said, with the whole digital, people aren't really we're not gonna see the pushback if there's a pushback until we're back in an environment where everybody's back together.
In my experience, there wasn't really so much pushback, I would say, from like white colleagues that I have, but there definitely is a level of just like cluelessness of, oh my God, what do I do? What do you think I should read? And then for me, like intrinsically, it's very frustrating because it's not my responsibility to tell you what you should do. If you notice that, you know, there are things going on that are unjust, or if inequity is present, like do your research. Like, we're educators, right? So the same way, if you don't understand content in the classroom, you do your research. So it's the same should apply with this. So don't just ask like your Black colleague or your colleague of color, oh, what do you think I should do? Oh, what books should I read? Do your research and figure that out yourself.
I did have someone reach out to me and say, hey, I'm in this situation and I want to understand, and at first intrinsically I was like, why, how are you just now getting to this? But then I caught myself and I'm like, okay, I'm going to provide you the material. You're interested, you're intrigued, and you want to make a change. You just don't know where to start. I can give you what I can, and I'll answer any questions where I can. But also, this is also a burden that's been put on me to like help you take me out of my oppression that was put on me. So it's just like, we could go in circles, but I think that needs to be talked about as well. Because even when we did different movements, we have to figure out ways that are not going to be taxing to us as well, to help people figure out how to use their privilege to be powerful and change these systems.
Yeah, I just had a friend finish her dissertation on cultural taxation and all of the way we are taxed as people of color, women, queer folks, anyone who's deemed as just the other in our society. And all the expectations and responsibilities and burdens that come with having to do certain things that other people don't have to do. And I can imagine it's double, tripled with teachers. Because, like, you're expected to teach. Like, I'm sure even when you're not at school, it's like, oh, they're a teacher. They know. Oh, they teach history. Oh, come here real quick. Talk about this.
It's definitely a tax. Like, you just become the go-to person for, hey, I have a question on this. Let me just call Jason. But it's also the fact that, you know, I'd rather them ask than just be ignorant of the situation. So if I can point them in the right direction and they're calling me at a reasonable hour.
But if I could too, and not even to be pessimistic about some that question what's happening, like, you know, people of color and specifically Black people, I question it because I feel like this movement with millennials and Generation Z or whatever the hell they are, it's not the same. So like, you know, when our ancestors had this movement, they were genuinely trying to create change, genuinely trying to make sure things were just. But I'll see, you know, like organizations or companies on social media, they're only posting about it because they're realizing, oh shit, this is going to affect my profit. Or you'll see an Instagram person, oh, this is aesthetically pleasing photo that just so happens to be related to what's going on in our country, I'm going to post that and get a lot of likes. So I question the intent as well. And that is something that like it triggers me because this is my life. Like I'm not only black, I'm a black woman, I am a black gay woman. So the fact that like people can pick and choose like, oh, it's trendy, so now I'll discuss
You
it.
just gotta give people a Pepsi.
Okay,
Okay,
Kendall Jenner.
Yeah, remember that
Okay,
commercial?
Kendall Jenner.
Racism is over.
And then it's all over.
We're done.
So
Do y'all remember the absurdity of this video? I wish someone would have told me earlier on that the way to live happily ever after is not by drinking Coke, but by actually drinking Pepsi. Who would have thought? So, enough with these silly videos. Let's get serious. Let's see what happened in the fall when teachers went back to school.
the fall, I will say like it's a lot smoother when it comes to planning, preparation, things like that. But we have had a few monkey wrenches thrown in the way just because of, government decisions. So like even for my school, we weren't supposed to be back in school until next week. But then there was a court order or something like that that just pretty much overrode what superintendent said. So then we had to quickly get ready to reopen school for our kids in like a few days.
Jeez.
And it's definitely not safe. We definitely took a risk. And
Well,
I'm sure many of you saw the news.
Yeah.
Two schools, one I've worked at, and then the other one I'm currently working at, there were COVID cases. And it just goes to show you, like, it's like, at what expense are you willing to just risk lives? Because yes, students should be in school. However, we also have to consider safety. And I don't think that's being thought about when some of these decisions are being made, because they're being made by people that are not even educators. But they're like making all these choices for us that can negatively impact us.
On the attendance side, like the kids are coming. The kids want to be in school. You get what I'm saying? Like the kids tune into my online class from that perspective. But on the other perspective, you kind of see that whole government clash of we're heading into an election. We need to make Florida look like everything's normal, and you kind of see that push. So it does create like a have and have not situation. If your family situation is comfortable enough where a child can stay home, then they get to make that decision, whereas some people don't have that option and they have to send in their student.
Throughout this episode, our panelists have provided much needed insight into the life of a teacher, specifically throughout this pandemic. And now they're about to share some recommendations with us. We would love to hear from you. Share your comments below. Let us know what you think. What are your recommendations for teachers going forward?
Now that I'm not in the classroom anymore, now I'm in leadership, that teachers are people. And there's a lot going on right now that teachers are not necessarily prepared for, but they're trying to do all that they can. Teachers are working over hours. They're working up until midnight, sometimes working on the weekend, buying their own materials when it comes to teaching online. They're using their own internet, their own data, their own hotspots. So there's just so much more of an expectation for teachers right now. And then it's unfortunate that you have some, not all, some parents that are not appreciating these efforts. So when parents do come off of, mute and make certain comments in front of all the other students, I've had teachers get cursed out at on Zoom. I'll see things on social media where parents are talking very negatively about teachers, and it's like you have no idea what they are going through during this pandemic, and still trying to make sure they are disseminating all this content. So I would say empathy, really, just having empathy for teachers, knowing that they are people. They are doing everything that they possibly can to make sure that they are educating your child and also showing them love. But it would be nice if that is reciprocated to them as well.
I think when we realize that, listen, these students, they're gems. It sounds super cheesy, but they are. They're gems who, are supposed to flourish, right? We're supposed to mold them and get them prepared to be the best people that they can be for themselves, not just for society, for themselves as well. And so I think that we can't do that if we're constantly at odds. So we all have to work together. And the thing is, I know, especially for the group of educators that I know, and the teachers that I know as well, in the administration at my school, we're very aware of what's happening. We're trying to navigate and make sure that students get what they need. And so we just want communication.
As I said before, a lot of us, even for me, who has 17 years in the game, I'm grinding like it's my first year teaching. I'm reading education blogs, watching different technologies to bring into the classroom, watching that on YouTube and trying to figure out how I can incorporate stuff. And it's a lot. It's really a lot. So
I think people are going to learn a lot. And thank you so much for being honest and just sharing. I also want to thank all the volunteers who made this possible today, everyone who's donated to Woke Wednesdays. for us to be here. I want to thank A Wiser Web, who set up our website. I want to thank I Speak Video, who produced this episode. Thank you so much. Without you, like I said, we would not be here. We will see you on our next episode. Like Jasula said, wash your hands, use hand sanitizer, wear a mask, and stay woke.